Do you have a second to help us pick a title?
I don't know. Give me some ideas.
That's
his job.
One of the things I get to do as a producer is write down things that you've said that would make a good title. So I'll read them back to you, and you just let me know which is your favorite.
Okay.
An advertisement for perseverance, full disclosure, to give me strength, a behind-the-scenes peek, got a squib, kind of like a palate cleanser, or my closet has closets.
Good. I'm sorry. You gave me quite a few there. I think it was the third from the end.
Third from the end. So got a squib. That was the New York Times one.
No, the one before that.
All right. Behind the scenes peek.
Behind the scenes peek. How's that?
I like it.
That works.
All right. Ready, Baz?
Go ahead.
Welcome to season 6, episode 25, a behind the scenes peek. This is the Rope Podcast. I'm Vance Bastian here with my co-host, S.A. Baz Collins.
Hey.
And we're really glad you're here with us. Our guest today is Robyn Gigl. Robyn is an attorney, speaker, and activist who has been honored by the ACLU New Jersey and the New Jersey Pride Network for her work on behalf of the LGBTQ plus community. Robyn is a partner at Gluck Walrath, LLP in Freehold, New Jersey, where she handles complex commercial and employment litigation. She's been selected as a New Jersey super lawyer since 2010 and as one of the top 50 women lawyers in New Jersey in 2020 and 21. Robyn is a member of the board of directors of Garden State Equality, New Jersey's largest LGBTQ plus civil rights organization. She's a graduate of Stonehill College and Villanova University School of Law. A frequent lecturer on diversity issues, she lives in New Jersey, where she continues to practice law by day and work on her next novel by night. And fortunately for us bibliophiles, she has a pretty boring social life. Robyn, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, I need a nap after that read of the bio. My God, girl. You've done a lot.
I know.
That's the short bio.
Wow. Yeah, well, yeah. So I have to ask, what was the impetus to go from practicing law to writing a novel?
Yeah, it wasn't like you weren't doing enough.
Well, the truth is, I've always wanted to write a novel. I started my first novel 40 years ago. So if nothing else, I am an advertisement for perseverance. It was, a long time ago. I was probably 30 years old, 28 years old at the time. And it was going to be a novel that was the catch-22 of the legal profession.
Nice.
So, that was back in the dark ages before computers and all those kinds of things. I wrote it longhand on legal pads and had
Wow.
them pick it up for me.
Real old school.
Yeah, real old school. But, writer's block, 3 children, a very active practice of law, all those things got in the way. And so that one was never finished. But this is something I've always wanted to do.
Well, so you did finally finish your novel, By Way of Sorrow.
I did. I actually finished the manuscript before By Way of Sorrow, but thankfully it did not sell. So By Way of Sorrow is my second completed manuscript, but the first one that's been published.
Awesome. So tell me about it. What's the elevator pitch?
The elevator pitch is the story of a transgender woman of color who's accused of murdering the only son of one of the most powerful politicians in the state of New Jersey. And the main protagonist in the book, Erin McCabe, happens to be a transgender criminal defense attorney, and she gets a call that refers the case to her, and her partner, Dwayne Swisher, take it on. And lots of things happen in terms of them trying to prove that Charisse, the woman accused of the crime, acted in self-defense.
So nice light summer read.
Right.
I hope it's a good beach read. That's what I hope. It's a nice legal thriller.
There you go. Okay.
I'm right in line for that. All right. So there's a lot to unpack there. I'm going to ask first about the transgender characters. Are they based on someone you know?
Well, the characters are not based on someone I know, but full disclosure, I am a transgender woman. And so, the old trope, write what you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I am an attorney. I've done a lot of criminal defense in my past, not so much now, but, over the first, let's say, 35 years of my career.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was something that I am obviously passionate about in terms of transgender issues. But I didn't want to write a book that was either a memoir or anything like that, or was really focused, I didn't want to focus it on, quite frankly, on the LGBTQ plus community. I wanted a legal thriller that anybody would pick up, somebody who reads John Grisham or Scott Turow or Lisa Scottoline, they pick this up and they'd say, oh, this is a good legal thriller. But then I hope a little subversively, or maybe not so subversively, I wanted to educate them on transgender issues, the issues that impact the justice system in terms of race, politics, money, power, all of those things. So, obviously when you do something, you want to make it exciting, you want it to be thrilling, you want it to be a page turner, but I also wanted to hopefully convey a little bit of a message too.
Well, and what I love about that, and I'm glad you said it that way, is that you didn't focus on essentially the coming out process, but you decided these are just characters in the world, and here's what they're really dealing with.
Exactly. Yeah. There are, a number of novels and memoirs about the transition process and coming out, all those things. Mm-hmm. As you said, these two women, Charisse, who's the woman accused of the crime, and Erin, who's defending her, they've already transitioned. They're through the process. They're living their lives on the other side. There's still issues that they both have to deal with because they're transgender, but, it's not a coming out story.
Right. Now, I know writing a novel can take a long time. Did you decide that the defendant was a woman of color before the Black Lives Matter really took off last summer?
Yeah, no, I actually started writing By Way of Sorrow in 2014.
Okay.
So a little bit of the backstory on it is, as I said, I had written another manuscript, gotten an agent. It was out being shopped. Not successfully, as I said. Mm-hmm. But as that was being shopped, I was doing a lot of reading and rereading of books that I enjoyed. And I reread To Kill a Mockingbird. And I'm not comparing my book to Kill a Mockingbird in any way. Mm-hmm. But so much of that book, To Kill a Mockingbird, is about the trial of Tom Robinson. And as I was reading it, being a lawyer, I was like, I'd love to know what's going on in Tom Robinson's head. Here he is, a Black man in the rural South in 1930s, accused of molesting a white woman. What must Tom be thinking? But of course, To Kill a Mockingbird is all told from the point of view of Scout, the young narrator. Right. We never get into Tom's head. And so the impetus was, what would it be like to be in the head of a character like Tom Robinson? So Charisse was actually the first character that I conceived. But then I realized that's my lived experience. I can't tell the story from Charisse's point of view. Mm-hmm. I have to have another protagonist, Erin, who will be the stand-in for me and my point of view. But to me, it was important to have as many diverse characters in the novel as possible. So Erin's law partner is Dwayne Swisher, an African-American male. There's other gay characters in the book. I wanted diversity. And look, let's face it, I've had a very privileged life, and I still have a privileged life as a white transgender woman. Transgender women of color, so many of them have it so much more difficult than I do. And so I wanted a character that could also talk to those experiences that are unique to those characters.
And what I love about it is that the Charisse character is not someone who is the bury your gaze, that she survived. She may have to defend her position,
Right.
but it's in a positive slant to where you can humanize what most people fear about transgender people. You're able to have that discussion through her journey, right? I mean, that's kind of how you open up the subject for the reader, right?
Yeah, and I wanted Charisse to be as strong a character as Erin is. I wanted them to have bad choice of words here, but codependent relationship in which where they both need each other. And there's a point in the novel where Erin says, to herself, I need Charisse because she's giving me the strength, because look all what she's been through and she's still going forward. I need her hopefully as much as she needs me.
Right. And it's great because it is a very timely topic, because as you say, a lot of transgender women of color are they're targeted. It's now, there's a wonderful thing about Pose in that it brought transgender women of color to the front and had their stories told and humanized. But at the same time, it also now puts that spotlight on the community. So, it's kind of a double-edged sword, and that's great fodder for authors to explore and to have that conversation that continues the story. But it sounds like yours is a much more positive slant. I mean, yeah, she's got this trial coming up, but you're able to do it in a way that actually takes the reader through that same journey. You know what I mean?
I do. And I think you made a great point in terms of when I came out in 2008, very few people knew, about transgender issues. And in fact, the book is set in 2006, 2007. And I did that on purpose. But, over the last however many 13 years, the transgender community, from things like Laverne Cox in Orange is the New Black and Pose and everything else, there's a greater visibility, Caitlyn Jenner. And with that greater visibility seems, rather than acceptance, it's almost like we now have the targets on our back.
Right. No, exactly.
And so, yeah, it's important to show what these lived experiences are like so that people that have no real knowledge of what it means to be transgender or know anyone who's transgender, and all they hear is the news reports or the statutes trying to ban this or ban that.
Right.
We get a different perspective. And hopefully, I know it's a novel, but look, there's people that this is part of their lives, and hopefully it humanizes, the novel helps to humanize trans people for a wider audience.
Oh, bravo. Because I think that those kinds of stories are definitely what need to be had, especially because what you're writing about, even though you said it in the past, it's still very timely. It's a very timely topic, that, and my hope is that people do come away going, oh, they're just like us. They have the same problems. They have the same issues. And, then they've got all this other crap piled on them that's not even of their own making. It's just, they're just trying to live their true selves. It's just, I really applaud someone like you to do something like this, because I think this is how own voices matter in telling our own stories, because there is a level of positivity, humanity, and the approach to it, I think, is handled much more deftly. I think you can have allies write something of this nature, but I think when you get someone who comes from that community, then there is people often say it's the authenticity, but I think there's a level of care that in how it's represented. And I assume, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I assume that your perspective was obviously do no harm to the transgender characters in it, but also to show, because you said there are other queer characters in the story. So I'm assuming that there's a way that you're painting the community in this so that, you have that diversity, that inclusion, and it just is. It's not something that feels shoehorned in, for representation to tick the boxes, kind of thing. but that it's part of the community, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I wanted, as I said, I wanted as diverse a set of characters as I could get, because diversity and inclusion is really important to me.
And it's life.
The work that I do, and you're absolutely right. It's life. And I didn't want just, white characters dealing with, issues, because the community is so diverse, and so many people in the community have different issues because of their race, their ethnicity, their religion. All of those things feature into, the mix in terms of how people's lives are impacted by their sexual orientation or their gender identity. And I wanted to have some way to represent the diversity of all of these communities.
So in your novel, is most of it the background stuff that happens in trying to determine what happened to Charisse up to the point where supposedly this crime was committed? Or is it more of a courtroom boiler kind of situation, or is it a combo?
Most of it is the former. Most of it is trying to determine exactly what happened. So there is some courtroom stuff, but it's all the pretrial stuff that you don't see in a lot of legal thrillers. Right. It's the trial that's the centerpiece. Well, this, spoiler alert here, there is no trial. But there's a lot of things that take place in the courtroom and behind the scenes. And I just did a program with the New Jersey State Bar Association about the book, and one of the panelists was a former judge who's now a prosecutor, and she was saying the behind the scenes stuff was spot on. And so I wanted, again, to give a reader who might be very familiar with what happens in a courtroom in a trial a behind the scenes peek at all the pre-trial things, the motions, the conferences with the judge and the lawyers. And then, of course, as you said, it's trying to figure out exactly what happened and how can we prove that if this case goes to trial. Right.
Okay.
And that leads to the other layer you worked into your novel, which was class and wealth.
Yeah, the person who's murdered, I won't use the word victim because that applies murder. Right. The person who is deceased is the son of, as I said, one of the most powerful and richest politicians in the state of New Jersey. And I wanted to get across that those things matter. Mm-hmm. We like to think we live in a society where, it's classless, it's, everybody gets treated
everyone's treated equal. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's not the reality of this situation. Everybody knows it, but we kind of put on our blinders and say, oh yeah, no, the system is fair, it works, but we know it doesn't. And I wanted to explore that, how somebody behind the scenes who is powerful, and because of his power, knows the politicians, knows the prosecutor, knows the judges, can help to shape and manipulate the system.
Did you go deep into that?
I'm sorry?
Did you go deeply into that?
I do.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool, because that's important too.
That more than anything, I think, makes it the summer page turner.
Right. But again, all of us who come from, I'm going to say, a diversity class, are always up against that. We don't have the same pull. We don't have the same resources. And we walk into a courtroom, if our difference is known, we walk in already judged.
Absolutely. And one of the questions posed to me was, there's a situation where Erin and her partner Dwayne, who are, in private practice, can be retained because there's money to retain them. And, Charisse has a sister who's has some financial resources, who's willing to pay for the defense. And the question was asked, well, what would it be like if Charisse just had to go with a public defender? And I said, well, we wouldn't have the book because, it would be far different. And part of the storyline is that Erin's personal connection with Charisse, the fact that they're both transgender, gives Erin both a window into Charisse and the issues that she's dealing with, but also that added pressure of she's doing things for Charisse in terms of trying to represent her that another lawyer might not. And those things have ramifications for Charisse in the case, both good and bad.
Right. Very nice.
Oh, very good.
So on a personal note, what was it like for you to finally publish your novel after essentially a really good career?
I think, like any debut novelist, I was overwhelmed, thrilled, jumping for joy, all of those things. And I was very fortunate, number one, to get a book deal. But when Kensington signed me, they signed me to a 2-book deal. Nice. So I knew that there was going to be a second Erin McCabe novel. So it's something that, for someone who has aspired to do it as long as I have, to finally hold your book.
There you go.
That's awesome.
It was absolutely amazing. And I was incredibly fortunate that it got a squib in the crime section of the New York Times Book Review. I mean, that was beyond the pale. That was just like, fantasy world.
That's awesome.
Right. Super icing on the cake, as it were.
Yep. All right. Anything else you want to cover, either about your experience writing it or the book itself?
I guess, the only thing I would say is for people listening who aspire to write and have that burning passion and yet, haven't gotten there yet, is don't give up. As I said, I started 40 years ago, but I had no clue as to what I was doing. And I'm not saying I had a clue. I knew what I was doing when I started writing again in 2011. But the process of writing a manuscript that never got published, of querying agents, of getting the rejections from the publishers, it was all a good learning experience. It was like me taking that advanced writer's course that I never took. Because if you can take the rejections and people saying, no, I don't want to represent you, and going through that whole process of trying to find an agent, you can take it as really negative, and it can bring you down real easily. But if you can refocus it and use it as part of your learning experience and listen to what people are saying, because as I said, the first manuscript, I got an agent, but it never sold. And when obviously I was disappointed, but then when you look back at it and you kind of read what, various editors were saying, if you're honest with yourself, you say, yeah, they're right. There are these flaws. There are these problems. Mm-hmm. And if you take it as a learning experience and keep working at it, look, I don't mean to suggest that, it always works out for people, but sometimes it does. And just don't give up. Don't take those rejections as failures, because they're not failures. As long as you're still writing, as long as you're still trying, you're not a failure, and you never will be.
Right. I mean, those rejections and any criticisms, it's not a failure. It's the audience telling you what they were looking for.
Right. Yeah.
And if you can learn from that, your career is going to grow.
Absolutely.
Excellent. All right. So what's up next for you? And you've already teased that you've got a 2-book deal. So what you working on?
Survivor's Guilt, which is book 2 in the Erin McCabe series, comes out on January 25th of 2022.
Nice.
In the final stages of the editorial process now. I expect advanced review copies should be coming out shortly. And so then I'm kind of waiting to see what happens with book 1 and book 2, because I was only signed to a 2-book deal. I don't know if there'll be a book 3. Obviously, a publisher wants to see how 1 and 2 are doing before they decide whether there'll be any more. Yep. So I have, the plot outline going. I kind of know what the story of book 3 will be, if there is a book 3. I haven't sat down to start writing it just yet, only because, as I said, I just finished up the editorial process on Survivor's Guilt. So I'm kind of giving myself a little breather before. But for me, writing is not work. Writing is what I do to relax. I read and I write. I don't watch a lot of television. I don't watch a lot of movies. So for me, it's my form of entertainment. So I know, even if I don't know yet if there's going to be a book 3, I'll start writing book 3 just because I enjoy it.
Nice.
Yeah,
would you
excellent.
Consider some form of self-publishing in the event that you don't get a third contract?
The answer is a definitive, I don't know.
That's fair.
I know people who self-publish, and I see what they have to go through, and sometimes it seems just as daunting as going through an agent and a publisher and everything else. Just different logistical problems.
Yeah.
So you still have to hire editors, you still have to do artwork, you still have to do all those things. So the answer is I just don't know.
And that's fair. It's sometimes a side of the business people don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
Especially if the business for you is the creative side. It's your, like you said,
exactly,
your pleasure of love. All right. Well, are you going to be doing any events, either in person or virtual, that people should know about?
Yes. So on Monday, actually, I am doing the Writer's Bone podcast. It's going to be at Cambridge Library. So they're going to do a live version and cut it into a podcast. And that's going to be with Daniel Ford, Kelly Ford, Eddie Boutenpan, and David Valdez. And so doing that's virtual. Go to the Cambridge Library. You can sign up for that. I'm doing the Outriders in DC conference in August.
Awesome.
So be there.
That's awesome.
Virtual as well.
This year.
Okay.
And I'm doing a panel for the National LGBT Rights Bar, or the National LGBT Bar. That's called Lavender Law, and I'm doing a panel there on attorneys who are also writers. Again, go figure how I got it.
Yeah. Who knew? Who knew that was a thing?
When is that one?
We're recording it in June, but I don't have a date when that's going to actually air. It's one of those things where you record it and then you have to be on when they're playing the recording so that you can respond to the chats and the Q&A. So.
Okay. Very well. Which of your sites, website or social, should people follow to keep up with that?
So I am on Twitter at Robyn Gigl. My website is RobynGigl.com. Go figure. I am probably the only person in America not on Facebook, but I'm also on Instagram.
That's probably a good thing.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say.
I'm also on Instagram at Robyn Gigl. So that's where I am. But, Instagram, I'm still trying to figure out Instagram. I'm much more comfortable on Twitter.
Very nice. All right. Any final words of wisdom?
Other than thank you so much for having me. It's been a joy. It's been a pleasure, and it's been an honor. I've really enjoyed myself. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for sharing your story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And come back when Survivor's Guilt is ready to fly.
Yeah.
I will be honored to. Absolutely.
Please do.
Yeah.
All right, folks, this is Written on the Edge. The Rope Podcast is produced by Rogue Ravens Media. For our disclaimers, links to social media, our listen stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.ropepodcast.com. We'd like to extend a huge thank you to Robyn Gigl for joining us. Robyn, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, pick up by way of sorrow and enjoy your very diverse, very fun summer read. And we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, what's that? Closing time. The bums rush in melody, dear.